Thank you very much for joining us. This is the Research Methodologies Community of Practice, part of the CGIR. My name is Evaristo Mapedza, and welcome to our webinar series. And this particular webinar is called Gender Lens for Business Sense, Youth as Game Changers in Agri-food Systems, why their investment matters. And I have an exciting panelists, a list of panelists on this particular presentation. And our first speaker is actually Cinderella Ndlovu. If we could go next, Jessica. Thank you very much. And before we go into the details of the presenters, we wanted to highlight maybe why we are conducting this particular series of webinar series. And the main first objective is that we would want to understand why youth engagement and investment in agri-food systems are crucial for Africa's sustainable future. We have had a lot of discussions where people speak about the youth as if they are going to come into the future, but they are happening right now. And one of the things that we also want to address as part of this webinar is we want to look at real stories of young innovators shaping the agricultural landscape. And you will see later when I go on to the outline of the speakers for today, that these are very dynamic and innovative speakers who are bringing solutions and ideas, and not just ideas, but they are applying these in different contexts. We will also want to look at practical pathways to ensure youth are at the heart of agricultural transformation. People talk about engaging the youth, but most of them do not identify how do we go about doing that in terms of identifying pathways that address youth engagement within our agri-food systems. And then the last point that we will address as part of this webinar is we're looking at opportunities for business and policy collaboration that empower the next generation of agri-food leaders. And I guess after this webinar, you have quite a lot of ideas based on the discussions that we are going to have. And now I'll go on to the details of our speakers for today. And our first speaker is Cinderella Ndlovu, who is Green Heart Trust founder and executive director. And when she begins her presentation, I'll also ask her to say something more about herself before she begins her presentation. And then our second sort of respondent will be Sarah Appiah, who is with International Water Management Institute as a senior research officer. For Sarah, a sort of mandate would be just to give us a synthesis in about 5 minutes. Having heard what Cinderella would have said, what does she see as some of the 2, 3, or 5 ideas that she thinks are key for the youth? So you'll be hearing from the youth themselves. And without further ado, let me welcome the participants once again, and I'll hand over to our key speaker, Cinderella Ndlovu. Please, Cinderella, feel free to also further introduce yourself before you dive into your presentation. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Evaristo. Hello, everyone. I'm really honored to be invited to do a presentation and share my knowledge, my experience with you as a young person who is very much involved in agri-food systems. I will share my screen right now. So as I share my screen, I'll just give a brief background of myself. So as I mentioned, my name is Cinderella Ndlovu. I'm the founder and director of a non-governmental organization, which is based in Zimbabwe called Green Heart. So it's an organization that works on climate resilience, working with young people, empowering local communities, looking at SDG 13 and other related SDGs. So I'm the founder and I'm the director of the organization. Since its establishment in 2021, the organization has worked a lot with young people. And what led me to actually starting the organization was as a young person that had just completed their undergrad in environmental science from a local university in Zimbabwe, and just like millions of other young people across the African continent and in the world, I could not find formal employment. But I really had so much passion, so much fire in my belly when it comes to environment and climate related issues. And I really wanted to try out some of those ideas. So I decided to start my own organization to give a platform to not only to myself, but to all the other young people in my community that have ideas, that really want to serve their community and that really want to be part of the solution champions when it comes to the different initiatives or the different challenges that our community is facing. And one of the biggest challenges that we're facing, not only in Zimbabwe, but in different parts of the world, I understand the participants are also coming from different environments, different countries. I would be more biased towards cities. I know most of the time when we talk agri-food systems, when we talk agriculture, we usually talk of our rural folks, we usually talk of farming communities, and that is where we get the challenge, where as the African continent, our population is growing, and we have statistics also showing that the population is also going to be growing even more in cities because more people are moving to cities. And the bigger question is, how are we going to feed all of these people? And looking as well at the demographics of our continent, where are we placing young people and how can young people be leaders of today and not wait for tomorrow? So as I was mentioning, African cities are increasing, and they're also increasingly vulnerable to climate-induced shocks, including droughts, heat waves, food prices are also increasing, and you find that young people are significantly affected by food insecurity, along with other marginalized groups of the population. And there is definitely an urgent need to build climate resilient, inclusive, sustainable urban food systems, not only just sustainable urban food systems, but just food systems in its entirety, because when we're looking at what is currently happening, our food systems are in disarray, and we definitely need to do a lot in terms of coordinating the efforts as well, that make sure that we are feeding our people, that make sure that we are rendering the opportunities to young people within the agri-food system space and creating and empowering our women and our girls. So by 2050, the world's urban population will increase by 2.5 billion, and most of these changes are going to be happening in Asia and Africa, and this is definitely going to make food security an urgent urban challenge. And in many cities, food is available, but it's inaccessible or it's unaffordable for millions due to poverty, informality, and weak governance. So food security is no longer just producing more. It's about the access, it's about the urgency, it's about sustainability in rapidly growing cities and rapidly growing communities across the world. So when we strengthen food systems, we are also wanting to ensure that we are responding to the current climate that we're existing in and the advent of climate change, where our food systems are significantly affected by climate change. We need to make significant adjustments that will ensure that our food systems are resilient and they respond accordingly. So there is the Cities Alliance, which was also looking at cities and how they are not only the biggest contributors to environmental degradation and the climate change challenge, but they are also part of the solution in which we can build a sustainable, inclusive food systems with young people at the heart of it all. So cities and resilience. We're looking at how together we need to build sustainable cities by strengthening the ecosystem, by promoting investments in local resilience and advocating for people-centered approaches. So as I had mentioned, if you look at the demographics of the African continent, you find that 60% of our population is under the age of 30. And most of the time, speaking from my experience as a young person as well in this sector, being young is often equated to being incompetent, to being inexperienced, to being undecisive, to being unserious, to being too much of a risk given to some of the funders to be able to give you grants, to be able to give you funding that young people desperately need to champion the innovations that they have to make real meaningful impact in their communities. So this is a challenge that most young people that I've also interacted with are also facing, and we need to change the narrative when we're looking at food systems and when we're looking at the population growth and when we're looking at the demographics that clearly show that young people are the majority of the African continent and the world in general, and we need to give them the platform to be able to lead today, to be able to champion the solutions that they have today. So with our urban areas, there's a lot that needs fixing, and young people can be agents of change when we're looking at climate change, when we're looking at water scarcity, when we're looking at the rising temperatures globally, and when we're looking at the most vulnerable communities in our world, whether it's informal settlements, whether it's the young people themselves wanting access to bigger and better opportunities, wanting access to the means of being frontliners when it comes to building resilient agri-food systems. So I'll give a case study of the city that I stay in. It's called Bulawayo and it's in Zimbabwe. So with the city that I stay in, most of the food comes from outside the city, and the significant majority of the food is being imported from surrounding areas and across the borders of Zimbabwe. And it's estimated that the city is producing between 20 to 35% of its own food supply. And in Zimbabwe, generally, maize is the most commonly grown crop in urban households, even in rural areas as well, alongside some leafy greens like kale, tomatoes, onions, carrots, and the likes. So the surplus of food that is being produced in households, is sold to vendors or local markets, and is providing a source of income for, I would call them urban farmers in quotes. So the other thing that is happening in my city is we have a lot of young people, and we have some space in terms of land that is still available, but we've identified a lot of gaps even when it comes to policies. What does the urban agriculture policy say, and how can people get access to land, especially young people? Where are the spaces in which young people can actually, those that are interested in farming can actually do the farming on the ground? So there are a lot of gaps that we identified in my city through my organization. And we were lucky enough to be part of the Urban Futures Project, which is funded by HIVOS. HIVOS is a Netherlands-based foundation, and this Urban Futures Project is happening in 2 cities in Zimbabwe, which is Bulawayo and Mutare. And we are working with a consortium of organizations, and the goal of the project is to build climate resilient urban food systems with young people at the forefront. So I did mention that part of the struggle being a young person founding an organization, having to lead it, is access to grants, access to funding opportunities. And because we managed to get into the consortium for this project, that is how that also assisted our youth organization to be part of the implementers of this project. So if there are young people joining today and they have their initiatives that they're running, I would definitely encourage you to find bigger organizations to work with, especially for your first project. That way you also get to learn from a diverse group of individuals and institutions that have a lot to teach you as a young person, just as much as our organization Green Heart has benefited from being part of this project and working with 3 other well-established organizations. And from this project now, we then got funding from in collaboration with Save the Children from the Global Environment Facility, which we'll start implementing next year. And we're really excited because it also speaks to the heart of young people, speaks towards green skills and young people, and agri-food systems are a great part of green skills. So with this project, we are seeing young people being innovators, coming up with actual solutions that can address urgent needs and challenges in agri-food systems. The project focuses on young people from as young as 10 years old up to 35, and we're engaging them across the entire food value chain, from production to processing, value addition, whether it's packaging, whether it's whatever process within the food value chain, even the waste management, the food waste management. So the project is diverse in that sense. And what we've learned from this project is that young people really have brilliant ideas that can actually make significant impact in the community. So we are utilizing the project to give that platform to young people with innovations. So the young people that you are seeing on the picture actually won an AgroSmart challenge. They were working in teams and they managed to come up with an application that they are now using to connect farmers in Zimbabwe with market. So it's pretty much market linkages. And linking this to what I had said earlier on how young people constitute the majority of our population, there's also the aspect of promoting indigenous food knowledge systems and youth enterprises and smart agriculture. So there is one difficult challenge that we're facing when it comes to promoting indigenous food with young people. These indigenous foods are also climate resilient, and we're encouraging farmers to plant more of those, to produce more of our indigenous crops that are more drought resilient and the likes. However, you find that most of these indigenous foods are not very popular with young people. And we are really trying to encourage also that intergenerational dialogue of the older generation also passing on the indigenous food knowledge of some of our indigenous crops that are actually drought resilient. And we're encouraging young people to come up with different enterprises that can also, for example, have an indigenous fruit flavored chocolate or a pasta that is made from an indigenous crop like sorghum and things like that. And they're really coming up with great innovations. So we just want to make sure that across the entire food value chain, we find young people there and we do whatever we can to also capacitate them. So some of the key interventions that we've made, capacity building, workshops on climate smart food systems, green skills training for youth and persons with disabilities. We've also done policy advocacy to integrate youth and disability inclusion in city food strategies and school-based environmental clubs where we are teaching and establishing food forests. We're teaching on permaculture and sustainable gardening from primary school level. And through our project, we're also sub-granting youth enterprises and doing some market linkages for young people that already have products that are ready for market. So that's one of our young people in the picture right there. As you can see, she's wearing a t-shirt from our organization, and it's really exciting also from my perspective as a young person, being able to mentor or being able to assist other young people to elevate what they are doing, to take them onto the next level. That is what gives me satisfaction with the work that I do. So even with our field trips where young people are learning about farming, this is the backyard, believe it or not, of one of young people. And when we are doing these workshops, we take young people to other young people so that the experience is relatable, because they get to see their peers and what it is that they are doing. So the experience is relatable, and they are even more free to make the connection with the young people that are doing well, and they're able to pass on the knowledge very well because they are peers. So with climate smart, innovative approaches, we have been using innovation hubs for youth-led food technology and agribusiness, and encouraging the circular economy approach by reducing food waste and also making sure that we recycle where possible. Inclusive and equitable food systems. We need to be disability inclusive in our approaches as young people when we are attending trainings, or we are conducting trainings, or we are implementing program or participating in programs. So there's also need for youth-friendly financial instruments to support green startups. There are so many platforms in terms of where young people can get the capital, startups on getting the funding, and also the tip that I mentioned earlier on of finding bigger, well-established organizations that you can partner with and learn from. So, and I'm also still learning the art of fundraising, the art of being a self-sustaining organization, because I think it's been really proven how the over-reliance of institutions on one particular funding entity is really detrimental. So strengthening also our local resource mobilization and being part of youth networks with other young people that are like-minded is really, really helpful. And it also personally helped me in terms of also getting to where I am, and I'm still continuing to be part of youth networks, also volunteering with different entities as well, so that I can continue to improve the work that I do and to improve on myself as a young woman, as a young person in the environment, climate change, agri-food system sector. So to date, we've integrated climate smart technologies in pilot communities. We really have a great relationship with communities, because I think one mistake that often happens is when we talk of young people, we want to really seclude them from everyone else. But our approach has been, we want to work with communities. We want to work with adults that are above 35. We want that knowledge exchange. We want the mentorship. We want the guidance. We want the advice. So we're working really well with communities, and we're increasing our participation. We've increased the participation of young women and persons with disabilities, because most of the time, some of the projects are not really inclusive of women. For example, if it's a young mother, are they free and comfortable to bring their toddler to bring their baby to a workshop if they don't have anyone to leave them with. Those are some of the things you need to consider. If it's persons with hearing impediments, are we providing sign language interpretation for workshops so that it's inclusive and everyone can be able to understand what's happening, what is being communicated? And of course, improving the local awareness of sustainable food systems. And all of these things are being done by young people. Our organization, all of our employees are young people. And before joining the organization, they did not have any prior experience. And despite that, they're still doing very, very well, which goes to show that young people are actually competent and young people are very skillful. They can learn a lot of things very quickly. Okay. So the lessons that we've learned, youth-led innovation accelerates climate adaptation at community level. Young people that go to universities on their third year, they come up with wonderful projects that just that are just collecting dust in university libraries. So we need to bring those to life and to make sure that in whatever spaces or in whatever capacity, young people are involved, young people are given the platform and the inclusion and the co-creation to improve the ownership and sustainability. So it's not just about young people being passive participants, but it's also about them leading the process. It's also about them co-creating solutions. And that way we are improving the ownership of projects or interventions such that young people are able to sustain those projects. And then localized data and participatory design enhance food resilience. Like I was saying on how the project is looking at the entire agri-food systems value chain, and that way we're able to collaborate with as many young people as possible. So these are some of the activities that we're doing. If it's tree planting, we do not only just go to the community to plant trees, but we go through the entire process of collecting the seeds ourselves, of bringing young people to the nursery, as you can see on the picture right here, laying out the nursery, planting the seeds themselves, nurturing the trees to maturity, and then planting trees. So I like to call it tree growing, not tree planting, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our trees survive to the point where communities can actually benefit from them. In conclusion, in relation to the Urban Futures Project, I think it's a great demonstration of how youth-driven, inclusive, and technology-supported interventions can transform food systems to make them more resilient, whether it's in cities, whether it's in urban areas. Once we support young people, we are supporting the sustainability of the entire community. So when young people lead, communities thrive. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I'll end my presentation here, and I'll hand it over to the chair of the meeting if there are any questions that I should attend to or any additional information. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't go over time. I wasn't checking the time.
No, you have done very well, and thank you very much once again. I think you see a lot of applaud from the participants. I think your talk is an inspiration, not just for the young, but even for the not so young as well. This is very inspirational. Thank you very much for such an exciting presentation. And what we'll do is, Sarah was listening in as you were talking, and I know that Sarah has also worked with youth in terms of aquaculture and other agri-food systems. Sarah, could you maybe just give us your reflections in a maximum of about 5 minutes, and then we'll then go on. Colleagues, please do add, Jessica has requested that you do add the questions and comments for Cinderella. Soon after Sarah's reflections, we are going to go to the questions, comments, and discussions. Thank you, Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Evaristo, and also thank you, Cinderella, and your team for the good work that you are doing. I think it's so awesome, and it tells us that youth is not the future of agri-food system, but rather the present and the future. Because when we see the wonderful work that youth are doing, we can say the future is the present. Yeah, so I must commend you and your team for what you are doing. And yes, most of the things you highlighted is that youth are doing a lot of innovations within agri-food systems that is more commendable. Particularly, I will reiterate some of the things that you do, like you said, especially in terms of the climate smart agriculture. We see in this life and age, youth are particularly attracted to technological innovations, and we see that that has made more youth, sorry, that has made more youth to be more attracted to technological innovations within the agri-food system. So we see this climate smart agriculture across nations within Africa. Youth are coming up with innovation ideas, apps to help address both harvest losses, address market linkages for farmers, and a whole lot. So we see that youth are very, involvement are very critical. However, sharing from a research point of view, understanding youth aspirations, especially within the agriculture systems in Ghana, under the CGI initiative on aquatic foods, we realized that to explore the aspirations of youth, we see that mostly when you get to understand the needs of the youth, it's very critical, especially within their socioeconomic context. What livelihood options are available to them? What are their needs, especially in terms of training, in terms of finance, in terms of what they can do? There are even circumstances that we realize that they do not necessarily have particular expertise, but when you're able to explain to them, they show interest, particularly with our aquaculture pilots in northern Ghana. Anybody who is who is a Ghanaian over here will know that mostly aquaculture is not done in northern Ghana, but rather in the south. But when we introduce the concept, train some youth, it's generated their interest, and some came together and for us to pilot the aquaculture project in 4 communities. And it interests you that previously, especially during the dry season, youth groups, particularly the women who used to migrate to the south to come and do head porter jobs, because of these projects in their community, during the dry season, they stay in their community, culture the fish, and even they have gone ahead to learn the processing to also take to various markets. And this is not only creating livelihood for them as youth, but it's also serving as a source of access to fish and also alternate livelihoods for other people within the community. And this is commendable. Additionally, we see that also there is a need, as you rightly said, to for governments and also projects to develop youth-tailored financing models. Because mostly within the traditional system, we see that mostly they request for this collaterals, which typically a youth will not have a land or have a housing facility to present. But we see that when projects or interventions come up with financial modalities that will help youth have access to finance without this collateral, that's very critical. However, in all this, from my experience, we have to explore financial modalities that are sustainable so that over time, youth will not build that concept of I need to be supported at all times. So within that project, what we have come up with now is to help co-create financing modalities that will be more sustainable, because currently we are supporting with initial capital, which we know is a challenge with the youth, so that they will reinvest in the subsequent cycle. But we ask ourselves, is this sustainable? Is there a possibility to bring this youth and private sector and also other private individuals together for them to collaborate on these projects to make it sustainable? So this is a question to us all and also various governments to explore. Again, as you highlighted, the issues of policy incoherence in most African countries, there's a need to address the policy incoherence where governments will link their youth employment policies also with agricultural value chains so that they are catered for, especially in terms of financing, and this will help develop the agri-food systems in the various countries. So I know my 5 minutes is up, Evaristo is here, so maybe these are my reflections for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I think there's quite a lot of interest generated, and thank you for for your reflections on that. And I would want to go to some questions which have already been raised for Cinderella. Maybe I'll be asking 2 questions at a time so that we try to cover as much ground as possible. I'll start off, Cinderella. Your first question is, can you share some approaches to your governance and organizational approaches that support effective listening and collaboration and avoid the stress and burnout we often see in long-running institutional and large organizations? Do you think young people are better able to embody inclusive and healthy organizational approaches? That's the first one. And then the second question for you, it says, how are the farming programs and the youth initiatives dealing with the challenge of water for sustainable farming? Over to you to respond to this, and then we'll go on to the next set of questions as well. Over to you, Cinderella.
Thank you so much for the wonderful, well thought out questions. I really love all of them. I think it really shows how our participants are really conversant of what's happening and the challenges, the real challenges that young people are facing. So in terms of the approaches to the governance and the organizational approaches, honestly speaking, it's been a trial and error, even for our organization, because for me, I come from a science background. And when I started the organization, I had no idea on the organizational structure, the governance aspect of it. And it has been through trial and error, and through learning together with my team that we've managed to also improve our efficiency. And also what has also assisted in terms of supporting the organizational approaches and improving them is that even as we are searching for grants or searching for funding opportunities, we also search for capacity building opportunities, and not just opportunities that directly translate to financial gain. So through that, we've also received assistance in terms of polishing up our organizational policies, our documentation, our HR policy, our procurement policy, and all those, our protection from sexual harassment policy, and all of those things. And because we've managed to establish that background as well, it's something that funders and potential partners also look at to say, do you have policies on the ground? If it's a youth-led institution, do you have policies on the ground? What are they, and what do they look like, and what do they entail? But in terms of the burnout, that struggle is very real, and I still have not figured out how to deal with the burnout and the stress, because I think being a young person, we always want to do as much as we can, doing all the different kinds of things, participating in different kinds of things, and we might have the energy to do that, but I've also learned that it's really important to take time to yourself, to even take off days, to take a break. And that's what we do with our team, to also take some breaks in between. For example, not having to come to the office every day if there's no field work or if there are no urgent things to deal with, and just also working from the comfort of our homes. I think that has positioned young people, that is what makes young people able to embody inclusive and healthy organization approaches, because we are flexible in terms of the working environment. And I think we also understand the issues of mental health, and we take them more seriously. We are also conscious of how we feel. And if you're not feeling great, it also affects your performance as well. So I'll definitely share if I find the winning formula on how to deal with stress and burnout. But for now, it's really a struggle for me as well. But those are some of the things that I've managed to do, and how we work with our team. And even the team building exercise and the social activities are also really helpful. Then the second question on how are the farming programs and youth initiatives dealing with the challenge of water for sustainable farming. So especially with Bulawayo, our city is very prone to prolonged droughts and dry spells, and we really have a challenge of water. And that's where things really get exciting, when we see all those wonderful innovations of young people coming up with vertical gardens from just a bucket and leftover pipes from plumbing, and how all of these initiatives are actually coming together. And I think because you're operating in a difficult environment where there's not enough water, there's constant water rationing, that has been able to switch on the plug in terms of switch on the sustainability or the innovation plug in the young people that we work with. So we're seeing a lot of innovations coming up. Even us as an organization, we are continuously working on that. So we have vertical gardens that are really small, but they can actually fit in so many plants. We're also using some of the knowledge we got from school, like the hydrogels. We have some hydrogels that actually hold on to moisture, and you don't have to water your plants as much. We also have hydroponics, aquaponics, and a whole lot of other things. Please do check out our website, greenhut.org. So it's green, the color, then HUT.org, and you see most of the innovations that we're doing on there. And also with our social media platforms as well, that's where we also post some of the work that we do with young people that are related to dealing with some of the water challenges. I hope I managed to effectively answer the first two questions.
No, that is well answered. Thank you very much. Jessica will also help by putting in the link to your organization in the chat. And then we'll go on to the next set of questions. The first one for this second segment is, it says, what do you find, you have mentioned that disability inclusion is a primary focus. What other factors or aspects or demographics of inclusion do you take into account? And could you provide the proportion of young women and young men involved in your programs? That's the first set of the first question. And then the second question is, what do you find is youth's incentive for joining these initiatives, the great initiatives that you are talking about? Or the converse of the same question is, or what is still holding some youth from joining? If you could respond to these two before we go to the next set as well. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions. Please do keep them coming. So in terms of disability inclusion, when initially we started, we also had a challenge with disability inclusion, because most of the funders are also failing to actually be inclusive. For example, when you host a workshop, you have to pay for the venue, you have to secure certain things, the projector and all of that. And when we began some of our programs, we had even challenges to get approval to hire a sign language translator to be able to facilitate the project. Because, for example, for a project, for a full day workshop, you might need 2 sign language interpreters, because it's too much for one person to interpret the whole day. So they need to be interchanging with one person. And it was a constant battle having to ask for the additional funding to accommodate the sign language interpreters, but the constant and the persistent asking and lobbying to say we need to be inclusive has really assisted us in that aspect. We still have not really gotten to the level of inclusivity that we hope to achieve, but slowly but surely we hope that we'll get there. And we are not just educating our partners on disability inclusivity, but also the funders as well, to say if you're giving out financing, if you're giving out resources, you need to make sure that they're also gender inclusive. So in terms of the proportion of young women and men involved in our programs, it differs as well with the programs. So for this one, for the Urban Futures project, the project is dealing with young people 100%. So all of the project beneficiaries are young men and women. Then in terms of the proportion for our projects, we get more young women than men for some reason. For my organization, all of our staff members that do field work are actually female, and then 2 males do the office work. And people always ask, was it intentional? Do you intentionally hire females only? It just happened to work out that way. And I think it's a good sign, especially when we're looking at how young women are always disadvantaged. And here we are as an organization having an almost all-female crew, and our work is intense. It's rarely office work. It's usually field work. We carry the shovels, we carry the banners, we dig the holes for the trees, we do the gardening ourselves, even with our nails and manicures. So it's really exciting to see how everything plays out. You would expect that we'll be having less young women because they're disadvantaged, but we actually have more young women participating, which is really good. I think we are doing great on that aspect. And then what do you find is youth incentive for joining these initiatives? To be honest, the incentive for young people, for most young people to join anything, is money. So in order to be also attractive to more young people, in terms of wanting them to be interested in environmental issues, to be interested in agri-food systems, is we tailor make our programs to show young people where the money is. Because for the longest of time, I was working for free. I was working for free and doing work that institutions would normally pay a whole consultant or a whole consultancy company thousands or hundreds of dollars, but I was doing it for free because it's always, oh, you will get exposure. You don't have experience. This is your opportunity to gain experience. Oh, that's your opportunity to get your name out there. And that approach doesn't work with young people. Currently, we need to show young people where the money is at. And once we show them that, the rest is up to them. If it's agriculture, we show them how they can how they can participate in agriculture while saving water, while being environmental stewards, and while making money in the process. That has been the core motivation for young people to join initiatives. And in terms of what is still holding young people back, I would say it's the exact same answer. The money is also what's holding other young people back when it comes to their participation, because most of our young people want the quick buck, and when it comes to some of these environmental projects, they take a bit of time. So you find that young people would rather participate in other things that have quicker financial returns, even if they are to the detriment of the environment, or even if they are at the detriment of to themselves, actually. So the motivation, the financial motivation, also works both ways. It could also be something that demotivates young people. So I will try as much as possible to also share my personal experience, to say, when I started the work that I'm doing, there was zero financial returns. I managed to gain more knowledge, to gain more expertise, to gain certification, to even prove to people that wanting to asking for specific tasks that they would usually pay for, to say, look, I'm an expert and this is how much I charge for this particular service. For example, I do greenhouse gas calculations for the waste sector, and I don't do that work for free, because I did the online courses, I wrote the difficult exams, I studied long hours, and it's only fair to, as a young person, to say, look, I have this expertise, and at some point we definitely need to get paid, because we can't work for exposure all the time. And the misconception is, you're a young person, you don't need money, but we have responsibilities that need money. Some of us parents, some of us have entire households to take care of. So there's also always that constant need for us also as an organization to be educating people, to say, all of the young people that you are working with, they also need salaries, they also need to get paid. So we are charging for this service. We would love to do it for free, but we also have young people that we all pay checks to.
Thank you very much. And I'm keeping an eye on time, and I know we'll not be able to cover all the questions. There's still more questions for you. So let me take the next two. The next one is, what has been the reaction of older members of the community to your youth-driven approach? Have you had to prepare them in any way, especially thinking about being led by young women? That might be strange for some people. So that's the first question. And then the second one is, have you been doing this long enough to start thinking about how to manage when youth stop being youth and become over 35s? How do you both support the new thriving business while also continuing to focus on youth? Do you graduate them into mid-adulthood and leave them to get on with things on their own? You can see that I'm saying is two questions, but they are quite loaded questions. And maybe as you answer the second one, if you could also give an idea to the webinar participants also to say, how big is your organization? When you say you have your team, how big is your team? If you could be brief, because we almost, I'm keeping an eye on time. Please,
Okay.
over to you, Cinderella.
All right, thank you so much. I will try to be as brief as possible. So in terms of the reaction of the older members of the community, I think what has helped us to win them over is you can see the work. So if we are working with a school, for example, we have environmental clubs in this particular school, and this is where we do our food forest with children, and they're always excited to participate. And when there was prize giving day at that school, it was not part of our organization activity, but we supported the school, we showed up, and we sponsored a prize for the two best performing students at the garden. And then after that, parents were coming and they wanted their children to join, and they also wanted to join as well. I think being results, they like having evidence for the work that we are doing has helped us to win the older people over. And with some of the work that we're doing, for example, the work that we do with trees, it's the older people that taught us everything. There's my mentor called Mr. Ndlovu. He taught me everything I know about trees, and he's always excited if we come with a group of young people that want to learn about trees, to pass on that knowledge. And then it might be strange to some people that the organization is led by young women, but they never say it out loud, so that's good. They keep it in their head. They've never openly said it's strange to have young people, young women leading. And then how the second question, what do we do when youths are not youths? So with our programs, we try to make sure that the young people that we work with are not permanent residents of a project. At some point, they have to graduate. If it's a young person who was doing some training on smart agriculture, at some point, they have to apply maybe for an agriculture loan, or they have to get a space to rent, to expand their ventures. So we try as much as possible that we do not keep the same individuals in the program for too long. So we pretty much give them the wings to fly and the tools to survive in the world out there, so that they are not just there to exhaust their youthful years, but they're also thinking about the future and what they will do if they go beyond 35. So yes, we do graduate them, and then we equip them with tools to move to the next, because we also want to make sure that they're also progressing in their journey. Yeah.
Okay, and the number of your team,
Oh, okay. So for our team, we have 6 permanently paid employees. These are the 5 young women, and then 1 male who does our finances, and then the others come for a contract for specific activities or contract based. So and then we have our volunteers. In our volunteer database, we have 100 young people that regularly participate in our projects, and then a whole WhatsApp community of over 400 young people that participate.
Thank you very much, Cinderella. And what we would do now, I would want to have a slide on questions for input from the participants that we are asking the participants. But we're not yet letting you off yet. Towards the end, I'm just asking you in a few minutes if you could prepare just in one sentence, how do you inspire the sort of the young generation of today to go and do something meaningful within the agri-food systems? And Sarah, I'll also ask you to think about that as well, to be just in one sentence. What your key takeaways are based on this? If somebody who didn't attend this webinar wanted to take one sentence, what would that be in terms of engaging in agri-food systems? So the question that we are asking, our closing question for the participants is, what do you think are the key roles and strategic priorities to focus on to engage more youth in agribusiness? So for colleagues who are part of this, what are some of the things? I know that 1 hour is not enough. There are so many things, questions, we even didn't get to cover all the questions. But for you, what do you see as some of the key roles and strategic priorities we need to focus on to engage more youth in agribusiness as part of the CG, as part of the private sector, as part of NGOs, as part of governments? What do you see as some of the ideas? Please do add your suggestions and ideas, and they will be updated, and we will share these with all participants as well. Please, colleagues, could you work on that? What do you see? What do you think are the key roles and strategic priorities to focus on to engage more youth in agribusiness? And as we head towards the last 2 minutes, I'm also, I know that Cinderella is preparing a one-liner for us, key takeaway. And Sarah, if you could also do the same as well, whilst we are getting input from colleagues on these closing question, which is, what do you think are the key roles and strategic priorities to focus on to engage more youth in agribusiness? This is a very big topic, and we could have spent more time. I get a sense that from the questions that we received, which we have not been able to address, but those questions will be answered. To ask Cinderella to answer. those questions. Please do add your comments on the retro board. The link is already in the chat so that you address this question. What do you think are the key roles and strategic priorities to focus on to engage more youth in agribusiness, either in terms of policy, investments, whether it's land, finance, or the different elements that you think are key to this. And having a look at the clock, colleagues keep on adding. It's now a minute before we almost towards the end. And I'll give this opportunity to Cinderella. We start off with you just in one sentence. What's the key takeaway that you would want to, or the key message that you want to give to the participants of this webinar and those who are going to listen to the recording? Over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think the one sentence for me would be, there's nothing that you cannot do as long as you apply yourself, you continuously are willing to learn, you can do it. Keep going.
Thank you very much. And you demonstrated it by starting something. Well done. And then, Sarah, over to you. In one sentence, what is it that you would sort of your key takeaway? Yeah.
Okay, I would say youth are very talented. Let's help them explore their aspirations and help them build on it, and we'll get a lot of innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And colleagues, join me in thanking our keynote speaker, Cinderella, and Sarah, who provided their reflections on this session. I know we have gone just a minute above our scheduled time, but thank you very much for the contributions and the discussions. We look forward to be inviting you in further discussions. Colleagues, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.